so doing a podcast like this, and, kind of our tagline is unfiltered stories. The thing is, doing it in an unconventional way like this, how many people are going to be able to relate to you? I mean, the struggle, like, I don't know, I think I told you, or you probably know the struggle is part of the story.
I have yet to get a tattoo, and I feel like I should. I feel I will.
You should.
Yeah, once I start, though, I feel like I won't stop. But I have a few in mind that I've always wanted to do, and I just feel like I'm going to get one, because I just feel like there's been such a shift for me personally, but even for a lot of people.
Let's talk about you personally, because what was your shift recently?
Just the last year or two. I don't know if it was one particular thing that just made me just get up and snap up, but it started about 2 years ago, and I was asked to give a speech at my brother's wedding. I'm his only sibling, so I expected that. And I gave a speech, and it was very short, very sweet, and I was very surprised at how many people came up to me afterwards and said, that was the greatest speech I've ever heard. I had people like the bartender and the photographer and strangers coming up to me saying,
like people that, not like your mother, oh, you're so whatever, but if you felt, I feel like you felt the fact that you moved somebody. Yes. And that was almost like somebody tapping you on your shoulder saying, you know what, your calling is this. You were paying attention, I think.
It was about 2 years ago. And so, like my mom, my cousins, my husband, oh my God, that was great, honey. But I expected them to say, I think I told them to say that.
You're like, please cheer me on.
Because I was so nervous, and so then, but all these random people, and people I didn't even know, then they were buying me getting me drinks and taking pictures with me. And these ladies took me in the photo booth, and my picture ended up on my mom's fridge. And she's like, who are these ladies? I said, I have no idea, Mom. All these people were coming up to me, and it felt so like it's just like a high to make this connection with all these people. I was able to connect a room, and I was able to connect myself to the others, and I was able to connect the room.
And through
words I wrote.
But through storytelling.
It was.
And it was your journey.
It was my story with growing up with my brother and just having a younger sibling, and sort of I kind of made it light, but I did weave in a little bit of the struggle that we had too. It was basically a single mom that we had. So I made it light. I kind of roasted him a bit. It was short. It was sweet. I didn't even swear once.
Oh,
because my mom gave me that little.
I was gonna say,
that's
awesome.
It was just, and then someone in particular came up to me. He's like an uncle of mine, and he came up to me and he said, "Oh, he goes, that was such a great speech." He goes, "You know what? I never had any brothers or sisters, but you made me feel like I did," and that stayed with me. Like the whole night, I felt like I was on a high, and it wasn't because I had 15, Campari and sodas.
Yeah,
I really felt. Like powerful, like you can connect that and you can make someone feel so good just on what simple words I wrote.
So it's really like, it seems like your passion is connecting to others and helping others through the story of your inspiration.
But I didn't mention half of what I went through. It was just me getting up there and just being myself and just talking.
Well, I don't think you can do that in a wedding, but it seems like now we've connected through social media. Like you said, we've talked once or twice for 5 minutes or less.
It's the first time I've met you.
I know, so crazy. which is great because I mean, number one, our conversation is going to be extremely authentic. That's the way I like to do podcasts and interviews, because I don't want you to know what I'm going to ask you. I don't want you to be able to prepare your answer.
That's why I'm kind of nervous. I was like, oh, okay.
Why? But you know about you, right?
So then I did the speech, and I kind of sat on it, and then my uncle said that comment, and it stayed with me. And then almost a year later, he passed away. Okay?
Oh,
and in his funeral was it was one of those things where I felt so grateful to be alive. And I shared this story with his family already, so I don't want people to think that I was at a funeral having fun.
Yeah, no.
I just felt grateful to be alive. I felt the urgency that I had to stop wasting time, because I'm a cancer survivor. I've been one since 2001. And I haven't.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
And we're going to get into your story, but I want to ask you one quick thing. So I always obviously profile people that I've never met before. And a few words came to mind when I spoke to you and when I kind of heard some of your story. One was courageous, one was resilient,
thank you,
and one was fearless. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and anything you don't want to answer, just say, you know what, we'll talk about it another time, because I have a feeling you and I are going to be doing more than one of these together.
Awesome.
So I know you've got a super interesting long story, and since we're limited a little bit with time, I'm going to start out by just sort of saying, when I first came across your profile, you and I connected. We've never met before.
Nope.
We spoke twice for 5 minutes, I think.
Well, I kind of stalked you for a bit.
Am I-
I'm like, she's either going to invite me or she's going to block me. So
Yeah, and I would never do that, of course. And I so appreciate the fact, sort of like you, that your story is resonating with other people and you and I connected. And so when I think about your story, I think about a woman that is fearless, that is inspirational, and that is driven. Would that sort of, would you look at yourself like that?
It's funny because I've been living in fear for like almost my whole life. I've always been afraid of judgment. I've always been afraid of wondering what other people think. I was afraid to come here. I was afraid to reach out to you. I was afraid to give. I was terrified to go up in front of all those people and talk. I'm not.
But you're here.
That's the thing.
How did you get here?
I don't know. Divine intervention, I guess.
I love that.
I just feel like you'd say I'm fearless, but I feel fear all the time. I'm always feeling afraid. I'm always afraid of what other people are going to say, what the fear of judgment, and that just goes to, I don't know if it's my upbringing part. That's part.
I think it's part of your whole story. But what I find incredible about you is that so many people are paralyzed by fear. So many of us, and even, it's funny, funny story about me. I used to be the one who would skip school doing speeches. I was terrified to speak in front of people, and now this is what I'm doing for a living.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But you are the exact same. I think that's why our spirits are so connected,
Maybe.
because you're actually talking about the fact that I was terrified to reach out to you. I was terrified to come here, but you're here. So what brought you here in one sentence or less?
I wrote a chapter about getting over my survivor guilt as a cancer patient, and that just led to all these opportunities presenting themselves. So I think the story, it's not that I want to tell the story. I have to tell it.
People need to hear your story.
I have to tell the story.
For those of our viewers that don't know what survivor guilt is, how can you describe it to somebody that doesn't have a clue or has never heard that before?
It's just you live in fear. So something terrifying or traumatic has happened to you. So for me, it was cancer. But I've had this conversation with heart attack patients or assault victims or stroke or people.
But your story.
I'm cancerous patient, so I'm in constant fear that my cancer will return, and the guilt that I got a second chance. And there's like hundreds of people that I know over the years that they have a loved one or they themselves didn't get a second chance. So you just feel guilty. Like why am I here? Why did I get a second chance and this person didn't? You almost feel like you don't deserve it. So the guilt comes from something much deeper. So you have to kind of go a little bit deeper.
When you say deeper, do you mean sort of your inner child, something that happened to you maybe when you were younger? Because I know there's also another story there.
Yeah.
And then you get cancer, you survive. Mm-hmm. And so you feel guilty because you still have that mindset of a 5-year-old.
Like, I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve this happy. You know what I mean? Like, it's a weird thing. Like, you feel so grateful, and then you learn to feel gratitude without seeming insensitive to other people's suffering. Because I would go out and I would run into an old friend I haven't seen in years. Hey, what's new? What's going on? And they'd say, oh, my dad died. And then I feel so bad because your dad died and I'm still here. Like, sometimes I feel there's an unspoken resentment that I'm here and you or your loved one is not, like their loved one's not. So you almost have to feel like you have to justify that you're still alive. And let me prove to you why it was good that I lived. Because look, see, I went on, I got married, I had kids, and I became a teacher. And you're constant talking to your mortality. Like, you're always negotiating with it. To prove that you made the good decision in keeping me here. But
is this a self-talk? Is this it almost sounds like it's a narrative you tell yourself, because I'm certain when people meet you, just like myself, I meet you and I'm thinking, oh my God, this girl is a rock star. Look what she's been through. Yeah. And she's standing and she wants to talk about it. And, there's so many, you became a mother, a teacher, a wife. Obviously you have lots of friends and family that love and adore you. And you've gone through things that maybe one of the things you went through would have taken out somebody, but you're here and you're talking about it and you're using it to help others and to serve others.
That's the point. It's
you're living
to give it back and to make that connection with someone. If someone is going to listen to this or see this or read the chapter that I wrote that's coming out in a book that I've co-authored with a bunch of other writers, we each contributed a chapter. And it's basically we all talk about our story.
Of
and
course.
now that was the fear we talked about before. I was afraid to put it on paper. I'm going to have to put it out there. What are people going to say? What are people going to think? Because people also would describe me. If you had to ask people, how would you describe Natalie? They'd say, oh my gosh, she's so funny. So when you have that adjective attached to you,
yes,
people don't like it when you bring up dark, deep things because
they look at you as kind of lighter and fluffy,
and they assume that you're going to be great, but they don't know that, or they'd be surprised to know that every day for me, Adrianne, every day is an emotional roller coaster because I'm always talking myself out of that narrative. There's always that voice in my head. Of course. That was their pre-cancer. It was their pre-cancer.
But that sounds like that was childhood trauma. And if we want to kind of talk about that for a few minutes, I know that your upbringing, and you can say as much or as little as you'd like, has been difficult at best. But I'm going to keep going back to saying it sounds like, because I'm trying to pull out what your secret, superpower is. It sounds like you live in gratitude, which is what has gotten you through most of the days when you talk about why am I here? Why did I survive? And you're almost like questioning yourself, but then you're not only giving yourself the answer, you're acting on the answer, which I find so incredibly amazing. So you want to talk a few minutes about your upbringing and sort of what you feel or what you're starting to learn about yourself and why, that part of your life is a little bit tough?
It is tough to talk about. I grew up working class neighborhood, immigrants, parents, grandparents. So the whole neighborhood was immigrants. And I grew up with the immigrant mentality. You work and you save your money, that's it. But it was an abusive house. My father, which we are estranged, he wasn't a nice person, and my mom was abused. And it's hard for me to talk about it because I know my mom may or may not want to hear stuff about this, right? So that's the thing too. When you tell your story, you have to be careful because other people will be affected. And I don't want to speak for them.
Of course. Right. And since this is, kind of your first interview, I'm not going to hit you too hard with it. But one word of advice that I can give is it is your story. And I'm always very respectful of people's privacy because you have to be. Right. However, nobody can take your story away from you. I mean, intimate details and things that would, hurt your mother or hurt other people. Of course, maybe have that conversation some other day. Yeah. But this is your steps and your obstacles, your struggles is what made you who you are today. Right. And you are one incredible human being. Wear it proud. So I feel like, character and people, like you are not made through, rainbows and unicorns. You are made through the obstacles and getting through the other side, even though I think you might think you're not through to the other side, but you are. I feel like you're just starting this brand new journey that's going to be incredible.
Yes, I hope so.
Absolutely.
So. It was a tumultuous childhood, to say the least. And, there was abuse, there was violence, and it was like that for a lot of people. That's just the way the immigrant upbringing was. But for me, it was worse. I feel like I was targeted by him and his family, and, they were left to take care of me. Like, I had some older cousins, and they just said and did really mean, horrible things to me. And that voice, it just sticks with you. Like, even if I'm in a room with loving people, like, you're saying all these nice things to me, I hear that voice, and I've accomplished all these things, but I always feel like I have to
quiet the voice.
And so that's why I think too, even up to last year, I couldn't have been able to do this because I was still coming from a place of anger and resentment.
Yes, you were saying that.
Fear. Now it's just, I don't know what it was. It's just coming from a place of gratitude, and just, I feel very lucky that I could share this story. Do I think I'm better than anybody else? No. Have people had it worse than me? Of course.
Possibly, but regardless, your story is that of such courage and such strength. And so, I mean, I guess I go back to saying you have also openly spoke to me about some mental health that you've struggled with. Do you want to talk a little bit about the PTSD?
Well, the PTSD, I think, came from the cancer. I didn't know it, though. I didn't even realize it.
A lot of people think
I didn't even think. I remember when I was going through cancer treatments, when you're hooked up to the IV, sometimes they unplug it and it runs on a battery. So when the battery dies, it starts to ding. like ding, ding, And like about a year later, I was on the bus. I was riding the TTC, and the lady was, I don't know if they still have it anymore, the strings you pull and the ring. So the lady missed her stop. So she's ringing the bell to get the driver's attention. I hear ding, ding, ding. And I had to get off the bus. I threw up on Lawrence. I had to get off the bus. I was on my way home. I remember it was Lawrence. It backed onto an elementary school there. I remember I threw up on Lawrence Avenue between Dufferin and Caledonia because the sound of that bell took me back.
What did it bring for you?
Took me back to the when I was in the chemo ward, and that bell would ring when the battery's low, and they had to call the nurse, and then they're ringing me more chemo. It took me back to when I was in that chemo ward, and I just, even now thinking about it now, I'm getting like flustered because it was such an unpleasant thing to go through all those treatments.
Of course.
It was awful. There's nothing I could say that would say, oh, it was great. Now I say, oh, cancer's the best thing that ever happened to me. But at the time, it was horrible. It was awful. And that was chemo.
We don't understand the message. I think when we're going through something like what you've gone through, and you don't really know why, it's kind of, I'm sure you've often thought, why me? There is always a message at the end. And whether this is your message about living in gratitude and sharing that with others, because my whole motto about doing everything is if you affect one person or 10,000 people, who cares? It's that one person that you changed their life. They needed to hear what you had to say today and now. Right. You don't have to be a celebrity. You don't have to be a superstar. You don't even need to be at the end of your journey. Because to me, I think Aerosmith says it the best, where life's a journey, not a destination, right? Exactly. And we're constantly going through that journey. And that's what I find interesting. You're still very new in your journey, but you're really not.
I'm still a work in progress. And that's what I say
everybody
in the chapter.
Is. Who isn't?
At the end of the chapter, I say, just side note, I'm still a work in progress. Just because I wrote this essay doesn't mean that I figured it all out and everything's great. Still, if anything, I'm more nervous and more fearful because now it's all coming out. It's all coming to the surface. So
what are you afraid of?
Just how people will react to what I wrote.
Who cares what they say? What if they say...
I know, it's so much easier said than done.
But what if they say, what if I say to you, okay, yeah, your story's great, but yeah, who cares?
That's okay, because then it wasn't written for you.
I love that. That's what I wanted to hear.
It was written for me. I wrote it for myself.
Because you'll have the haters. You'll have the people that aren't thrilled, and don't ever let what one person says or 10 people say, smother who you are, because who you are and the message you have is so important, because it's also a message of hope.
I hope that it is. I hope that people...
It is.
And it doesn't... You don't have to be like a cancer survivor to understand it, right?
You're right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Survivor guilt, or just dealing with trauma or self-esteem issues and all that. That, I think
everybody has something. Whoever comes out and says, you know what, I'm good, I've done my therapy, I am rock star, there's nothing wrong, they're full of shit.
And that's why I'm also trying to get people to understand is that we have to be nicer to people and approach each other with more of a level of compassion and empathy.
And love.
And love, because you don't know what they're going through, what they've been. Every fucking person, I'm going to swear, it has gone through something or is going through something. And a lot of people are living bullshit lives because they're trying to cover it or hide it for fear of what other people are going to say, or for fear of if you claim it, then you have to own it. Then you make it real. So if you keep it hidden, then it's not real. But a lot of people are struggling, so you have to be nicer. You don't know what people are going through.
1,000%.
But the problem is that, but when you start talking to people, it's like, well, who's had it worse? And that's why sometimes friendships don't fizzle out, because if we always talk and you always try to, well, if you think you have it bad, well, listen, what am I supposed to say?
Keeping score, whether it's in a friendship or, kills most relationships or marriages. And yeah, you cannot keep score. To me, it's like, I love hearing other people's story, because sometimes, if you have to really think about, okay, are we keeping score? Are we doing this? Are we doing that? It's sort of, you miss the message.
Exactly.
You miss the story. You miss the courage. You miss the things that you used to get through that. And that's, sort of what I'm trying to understand too is, was it your faith? What brought you through some of these really
faith was
traumatic experiences?
And there's more. I have way more.
I know. That's why I said this is going to be part one out of a 5-part series.
I got a whole podcast on every topic you want. Faith was, I grew up Catholic. I grew up Christian. And
Yeah.
of course, I got older and I lost it. But I also grew into a very apathetic adult, a young adult. I was very jaded, very confused, just very neither here nor there. And then I got sick, and now, you know, my mom, my grandmother, all my neighbors, all these people started coming at me with the holy oil and this and that, and the prayers. And it did work. I do believe that faith over fear is what carries you through. But these days, if you say faith, it kind of turns people off. They think you're like this religious.
Right, but faith
person.
could be like spirituality. To me,
faith
same.
Faith is you. It doesn't necessarily mean religious sentiment. It could just mean you're a hopeful person. You're very optimistic. You try to see the positive in a negative. It doesn't necessarily mean a theological subscription. And even if it does, it's okay.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Okay.
But who you consider, you know, your divine intervention, whether it's God, the universe,
Right.
you know, your angels, you know,
Love and light. As long as it's a love and light energy, you tap to that, and it will help you. It will help you.
Your higher power is just that, your higher power. People always ask me, you know, are you Catholic? Are you this? Are you that? I say the same. I'm Roman Catholic. Yes, that's how I was brought up.
Right.
However, I'm very spiritual.
Exactly.
You know, that's what I practice. I practice spirituality.
Yeah.
And I think that is the way, or that is your message as well, is that, you know, it's fine if they came at you with the holy water and whatnot, but you still had a higher power, something higher than you, and something higher than all of us.
And then you have to surrender to that, because, you know, you could try everything and do everything, but you're not really in control. You have to surrender to what will be. And, you know.
Which is so hard, especially in your position,
very
right?
hard. I was very young, and.
How old were you?
I was 24.
Wow.
And so I cried for all the things that, you know, you cry for all the things that you're not going to do anymore, but then you get sad for the things that you might never get to do. Like, I'm never going to have kids. I'm never going to go to Europe. I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have a house. Like,
all the bullshit stuff you told yourself.
It doesn't matter.
You're living today.
Yes.
You've got the kids, you've got the house, you've got I don't know about the trips, but it's funny because a lot of the stuff, what people say is, you know, depression is thinking about yesterday. Yeah. Anxiety comes from thinking about tomorrow. It's really living in the moment and living in gratitude for the moment and for today, because nobody's promised tomorrow.
Nobody. And that's the thing. So when you've, like myself, who's had conversations with her mortality, I still do.
I think we need to. I think we need to have those conversations.
You're always like, if I see you now, I'll try to leave off the best way I can, because it could be the last time I see you. But people assume that it's this morbid way of like I'm always thinking of death, but it's not. It's actually opposite. I'm just like, I'm so happy to have met you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy we're talking. If I can connect with other people and get this out. If someone's going through a shitty thing right now and they're like, I'm not gonna get through. How can I do it? You know, come talk to me. I'll help. You know, because I need it too. It's not like I'm 100% cured. I still.
Well, not even cured. It's your journey. Like, I don't know if you're thinking, like, there's a lot of people think that there's got to be this epic, you know, parting of the skies. The sun comes through. You know, there's going to be days like that, but you're going to have days that are struggles too. Yeah. And so I think that, like, what you're going through right now is that journey and is that whole self-realization, and it's beautiful. You're doing it with grace. You're doing it with honoring your life. Yeah. And the gift, I think we are all given, is the gift of life. Yes. And you know how you talk about the whole, you know, whoever I see, if it's going to be the last time I see them, that is a very old school way of thinking. I was brought up the same way. Yeah. And, you know, my parents are always like, you know, when you never go to bed angry and you never da-da-da-da. And I think it's a beautiful thing that they taught us. We don't have to say it. We can talk about it. We could teach it to our kids and our friends and anybody who will listen, but you don't have to live it. But I think it's great. I don't think
really,
it's.
I don't
think
like, it's not like every time as I say, hey, God bless you. I hope this, like, it's not like I'm like.
But it's instilled in you.
It's in my head, and
to be that great person.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Maybe I'm not conscious of it, but I think I am.
I think you are.
Like, I wish well for you. I hope you're well, and I hope whatever it was you're struggling with, I'm glad to see you're okay. Like, if this is the last time we see each other, then I hope that we end up on a good way, so that our souls are at peace. You know.
I love that.
Just the way I kind of. But people assume that you're like this morbid person, always thinking of death. And
have people said that to you?
Maybe that's just what I'm assuming. Again, this is just your own voice in your head, which
that's
we all have that voice, and half the time it's
the voice you
wrong.
Need to quiet. Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, fuck off now.
My sentiments, exactly. But I think you've got that voice. And like you said, being, brought up in a European, kind of household and, having certain messaging given to you, and the messaging wasn't always positive. It was really tough as a 5-year-old, let alone as a 25, 45, or 55-year-old woman or man, to quiet that voice that has been instilled in you. But it sounds like you're doing the work. And the number one thing for me is that you're aware of that voice, and you're aware that that is not true, right? The whole fear thing, I always say false evidence appearing real. Yeah. And you're kind of like, okay, I hear you, I don't believe you, and I'm not even going to listen to you. So,
and some days I do. Some days it gets to me, and it gets me down. I just can't get rid of it. And she's really strong, like very loud, and it takes a lot to shut her up, but eventually she does shut up. And sometimes that takes, you get into a funk like 2-3 days even. You just can't you just stop it now. And
so you're human. So you're saying,
yeah, I'm human,
so you're human.
And I'm a woman. So we are all, and I'm premenopausal. So like,
oh geez, that is a podcast all on its own, honey.
So it's like my poor husband. He's, I have 3 daughters, so he's like surrounded with women. And sometimes he looks at me and I'm like,
it's probably your superhero, right? Because he's
we were dating when I was sick. We were together.
Oh,
and
wow.
And I thought, forget it. Like, just move on. Like, you're gonna, if they can't promise I'll be here in 5 years, and they're saying I'll never have kids, maybe, why? Like, what are you doing? And he stayed, and then, but that becomes another conversation years later. It's like, because then we're married, so we fight, and like people
everybody does.
And it's like, well, are we together because we feel like this obligation, like because I was sick and you didn't want to, I didn't want to leave you because you were with me when I was sick. Like,
what does he say?
He goes, no. He goes, you were fine when we got married. You were already okay. He goes, no, I don't think he thinks that at all. But again, this is my voice because I was told as a kid, like, no one's ever going to want to be with you. No one's ever going to want to marry you. If someone comes along, you should be grateful. Watch out. They can always do better. These are the things people.
The messaging,
but they told me from a very young age, and I believed it. And whenever I tried to talk back, because I was a chatty kid at the beginning. So when I did talk back, or when I did, blurt something out, I was immediately shut down and reprimanded. And see, look how rude you are, and you're so silly, and you're just not that special, and you're so stupid. These are the things that were told to me. Yeah. So you believe it, and if there's no one else around to say no, that's not true, or to voice for you, because a kid doesn't know. Maybe that's why I became a teacher, because I can spot the kid that doesn't have that cheerleader, and I gravitate to them, especially the troublemakers, or the ones that are the weird or the oddballs. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that need the most support. There's absolutely reason, right? So I think maybe that's why I became a teacher. And every time I get a class and they say, "Oh, watch out for this kid. Watch out for this kid,"
and you're like, "I'll take them."
And then I meet them, and we end up having this great relationship. Well,
what grade do you teach?
Well, now I'm doing a reading program, but I've done toddler, I've done elementary, high school. I like the elementary grades, but like a couple years ago, I did French. Don't ask me how I got into teaching French.
I was gonna say
don't
French.
Ask me.
Okay,
and I'm not speaking French for this interview. So if you have Quebec I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, no. Okay,
But like this is one girl. She was she's trouble, and we were fine. Like I never had a problem with her. Like because you
connect
with her. She's struggling. She's not giving you a hard time. She's having a hard time, and there's a reason. You don't know.
There's a reason they're acting out.
Going through at home, especially after the last couple of years. These kids are messed up. Like I tell people now all the time, I think the real pandemic is coming because you've got a generation of kids now that have not learned proper self-regulation skills. Their emotional intelligence is very low. They don't know socially. They don't know how to sit in chairs. Yeah. They're it's digital.
Constant.
They don't know how to make eye contact. There's no empathy. There's no human connection. So I say to people, I think the real pandemic is going to come in a couple of years because we're going to see.
When you see these kids that have.
Because I see it now, and so many teachers are just burnt out. And I know teachers get a bad rap, but we've been through a lot the last couple of years. Because
you know what?
We're almost like we're like parents, we're therapists, especially the last couple of years. These kids have no sense of direction, so we're almost like trying to just keep them calm, like. You're fine, you're okay. So many teachers I know are burnt out. They're exiting the profession. There's actually a teacher shortage now because nobody wants to do it.
Whereas before, there was an abundance of
teachers. That's why I had to take French because I couldn't get my foot in the door. So someone said, take French and you'll get a job. And
And then sure enough, there you go. Right. But so what you're saying to me though too, and same with what I did with private investigation, teaching is just a conduit of you helping others.
Exactly.
And it could have been the younger inner child of you. And so you're wanting to affect that change into somebody else that never had it because you didn't. How beautiful is that on a scale of 1 to 10? I mean, crazy.
Well, thank you for that. And I hope. I mean, I don't even maybe realize I'm doing that. Sometimes in the conversations, even if I'm talking to a parent, I'm trying to impart on them what I would have wanted to hear as a kid. So maybe this is how you should approach your child when you get home tonight. It's more for the parent too.
Educating them for sure.
Like sometimes, like teachers have to be taught how to teach, and sometimes parents need to be taught how to parent. Like you need a license to teach. I think you need a license to be a parent sometimes.
Yep.
Because it's not an easy. It doesn't just come natural to many people.
It doesn't come natural, and there's a lot of outside influences. The business that I'm in, and family law is turbulent at best. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it does get taken out on the kids. 100%. Depending on what mom and dad are going through, it does trickle down. It's a trickle down effect. And I'd love to say everybody does it 100%, but they don't. No. And, then like you said, then you've got the teachers that are, or the therapists or the doctors or the whomever that are left to deal with somebody that they consider a problem child or rambunctious or whatever. I don't know the proper terminology that teachers use these days, but really all they're needing is help or guidance, right?
They just want someone to make them feel safe, make them feel good, to make them feel seen. That's all they want. And they'll act out in all these crazy, strange ways. They just want, you to see them and acknowledge them and to say, hey, how are you? You good? Okay. Like, that's it. That's all they want. It's so simple. And we make it complicated with all these like interventions and all these workshops. And I sit through
and
many
diagnoses
of them. And all these forms and all this paperwork.
Acronyms of what they are and what they're not.
What should we do? And you could be in a boardroom with like 5, 6, 7 people. And I just sit there. I'm like, I think he just wants a hug. Like, it's so simple.
Yeah.
That's all he wants. And some boundaries, some structure. He wants to feel safe. And see, for me, ironically, school was a great place. I loved going to school. School was like a refuge.
Well, I was just going to say, it must have been, and I know for most kids, just, going through the school system with 4 of my own, for many kids, sadly, it is. Mm-hmm. It's a place where they can, get a meal in the morning. Mm-hmm. They get breakfast. Mm-hmm. They get away from abuse. Yeah. They get respected. Sometimes, most of the time, hopefully. Yeah. They have friends, they can learn, they can be themselves, they get to exhale. Yeah. But then to go home to
it just was
their family situation.
There was boundaries, there was structure, there was, it was just like a safe place for me. I mean, all that schoolyard stuff did take place and all that drama and all that. But for the most part, I liked going. I felt comfortable. I had a lot of friends. It was the same group all the way through elementary. And then many friends we carried on through to high school. Many I still talk to today. So
I love that.
Right? Yeah. So it's just I feel school was a good place for me. So
I love that. And so
I hope to make that for someone else.
I think you've already made it for many kids.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. How long have you been a teacher?
I officially graduated 2014.
Wow.
But I was working with kids before that.
Of course. So I know that you've affected many lives in a positive way, kids and parents.
I hope.
So as we wrap up, I've got two last questions for you. Mm-hmm. What is next?
That's a good question.
Isn't it interesting to find out what's behind door number 2?
I don't know. I like door number 1 so far. Well, I've written this essay, like a chapter. It's part of a collective series. It's coming out July.
Wonderful.
Now that's opened up a valve to more writing projects that I want to do, maybe more opportunities like this where I could just speak.
So telling your story is kind of what I hear.
Yeah, telling the story, just sharing the story, just making more human connections. And
inspiring others through storytelling.
And storytelling has been around forever. So
that's my whole point. I mean, prior to internet and phones and TV and radio, how did people learn? Around a campfire or, in their home. That's right. With their elders and with their siblings, and they would storytell about back in the day, and that's how they learned. And how ironic that everything, old is new again. That's right. Because I think telling stories is so important. So I gave you 3 words that I thought described you best. What 3 words do you think describe you best?
Oh, geez. Okay. I would would say, like right now, how I would describe myself right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still am fearful. I still am afraid. Not as much, but almost like excited though. It's not like a scary fear. It's like an excited fear.
Fair enough.
Just hopeful.
I love that.
Hopeful and just grateful. And
authentic. I forgot to use that one. You're so real. Like there's nothing that you kind of don't say. And
what you see is what you get. Like, yeah. Like, I'll swear. You said, when you call me, you're like, oh, because my mother's like, for a teacher, you shouldn't swear. And I'm like, why? Like, fuck. And so,
yeah, poo-poo just doesn't cut it some of the time. And yeah.
That's why I liked the mask for a while, because we had to wear the masks in the classroom, and like sometimes the kids would say, you repeat yourself a million times, and miss, what are we doing? I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. Like,
yeah.
I said it 100, but I had the mask, so nobody knew.
Nobody knew,
and I'm like, okay. Well, now it's like, oh, well, you see it's on the board here.
Yeah. And in your brain, you're like, yeah. Oh, and I think there's a place and time for it. But I mean, I never, come out of the gate, swearing, but it happens. And you never want to offend anybody, of course. No. But like I said, it just poo-poo. Just
sometimes you're an asshole. That
doesn't cut it.
He's being really rude. No, he's being a fucking asshole. That's how you describe him.
Say it the way it is. Authentic you.
Authentic. That's what you see is what you get. And some days I'm not in a good mood, and I'll say, listen, maybe we'll catch up tomorrow. I'm just not feeling it. I don't want to, I don't want to pretend to be something in front of, just because for the sake of. If I'm feeling shit, I'll say, listen, I'm feeling really shit today. And we talk about it. And, authentic is a good word, I think.
I think so, too. And how beautiful that you're basically a mirror for your three girls. We're going to have three amazing young ladies coming up into
I try to be. That's the thing. Also, when you become a parent now, what kind of world are they going to be left with? How do I want them to be? And
well, that's it. To me, my legacy is my kids. I'm sure. Well, you could ask them now because they're between, the fun stages. But they'll tell you all the things I've done wrong. But I'm going to make mistakes. I screw up. I own it to my kids. I don't know about your parents. My parents to this day would never. I mean, my dad's no longer with us, but they'll never really admit when they're wrong. And fair enough. Right. But I kind of own my mistakes, and I'll say, look, you didn't come with a handbook, or they lost it on the way out, right? Yeah. But I think that you're the same way, where you'll just be that authentic person and say, listen, I screwed up, or, this is why I'm being the way I am. Yeah. And just being that woman is, they're going to mirror what you're doing.